it's Nikki Doyle doing mediation. So I published on Twitter a really short video when I kind of use this folder, just kind of showing how I keep my lunar returns and solar returns, but mainly I'm showing my lunar returns. This is a photo album I've had for years. I've got a number of these. So as you can see, probably not very well, I have my lunar returns here, and if you look a little bit further through, I'm not sure what you can see. Oh, it's quite bright there. You can probably see I also have, that's a Leatherman GT, other readings there, and that is my yearly tarot reading. So I use these through the year as a place to store it, and then I'll archive them off. Now, obviously, I will store other things in my journal, and this is just a quick summary. What happened that month? Oh, okay. What happens when I have a Scorpio ascendant on my lunar return? Okay, I can go back and check. Also, it's really good because obviously I'm a psychic and medium, so I am not using astrology by itself. I'm using it as another form of another tool, or a tool that I use. So the same with cards, and also I quite like at the end of the year or the beginning of the year tending to do a year spread. So I like to keep them all in one place, because if not, we forget to reference them. So I really wanted to do a quick video. It might be actually a bit of a long one. I might have to cut it in pieces, on how I use them personally as an energy worker. I work with energy, and it means that you focus on things in a little bit of a different way. I'm also very focused on being active rather than just allowing things to happen to me. I'm like, how can I use this energy? What is it going to be good for? Get those things. And sometimes it is the energy of just relax. Practicality can be, oh, I need to go and paint, I need to colour, or I just need to sit. So how do I use it? So I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an insight how I use it personally as an energy worker. So hopefully that will help other people, because it's a really good time. It's a really good It's a really good timing mechanism. If you work with spirit, you'll know that they're shit at timing. I think they usually just tell us what we want to hear. So the when is really good, and divine timing. I mean, I love, there is a difference between waiting and being. Waiting, you are caught in the energy of wanting to wait to go into the future, and it keeps you from, being aware of what's happening, and it keeps you from, you waste a lot of time waiting, whereas being is actually sitting within the energy of right now, and that awareness is really important and can be really useful. But it doesn't mean you don't want to know when. And often as energy workers, things come up, you're aware of something happening, you just don't always know when. And I think this is, you can narrow it down with astrology. You can kind of look, oh, it's probably around that time stuff is going to happen. And because I use lunations a lot, moon phases are really, really helpful, because new moons are often about integration, really good at when you're looking to embed something into your into your lifestyle. So, whether it be exercise, or whether it be a change of routine, or whether it's going to be you want to, make other changes. I can't even think of other changes right now. But anything that you want to do, they're really good drivers. They're really good. The time where you sit back and you've been wanting to do something for months, maybe a year, and then you go, oh, I'm going to do that now. And usually it's because you'll notice your new moon has kicked it off. It's kicked off other things that are in your chart, but it's kicked off that underlying kind of need, but it's the right time. And everything happens at the right time. And if you've ever spent a lot of time pushing and trying to embed things into your life, or make things happen and they're not happening, it feels like you're constantly trying to run in mud, or swimming against the tide, then you understand that you keep being buffeted. That's a lot of wasted energy, and essentially I'm quite lazy when it comes to that. I want to do things in the most efficient way. One thing that I've learned is that you can't push certain things have to happen at the right time. Astrology is really good for telling you roughly when that right time is. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, because you kind of sometimes spirit will, knowing me, they'll string me along a little bit, because I really have an instant, I want it now. So I go, yeah. And then I look up and go, yeah, it's not happening for this length of time, because you know, if you don't see a certain things happening, you know stuff isn't going to happen. So you know that you can sense things for yourself, but it's also a good confirmation of things. What should you be focusing on? Where should you be putting your energy? And lunations are a relationship zodiac cycle between the sun and the moon. They are about relationships. They are about internal relationships and external relationships, and a bit of both. So they're great in looking at our relationship with our within ourselves. They're great at looking at the physical and the non-physical, which we're made up of, the whole, when they come together and when they're apart. And full moons are really good to see that fruition, to kind of go, okay, I'm seeing the fruits of my labour. I'm understanding why, I felt compelled to do this particular thing. So it makes sense for me to use my lunar returns and solar returns, and I use them quite a lot together. I always know that my base chart is my natal, but how do I use it from an energetic perspective? Especially we're coming up, this is a Taurus new moon, this is April the 23rd, and it's at 3:24, let me double check. I can't remember, let me just double check on my phone. It is 3:24 or 3:25, I can't remember exactly. And so it is kind of like, there's three things if you're going to use the new moon, and as you know, astrology as well. So this is mainly for energy workers who know some astrology, or astrologers who want to use the energy and as opposed to looking at it as a more conceptual idea. So it's more experiential. So this is in Taurus. Taurus is an earth sign. It's a very kind of physical side in a lot of sense. So it's very it talks about the material side, nothing bad, but we're going to take it out of the financial side. We're going to take it out of those type of things. Our focus here is looking at where is it in the chart of the lunation in your location. I'm in the UK, so it is in second house, and then I want to look for repeating patterns in my lunar return. Now, the good thing to know about your lunar return is that you will have 2 to 3 new and full moons, and they're around 6 months apart. So if you use 30 degrees as the orb, which sounds quite big, but actually it's quite important. Sometimes your new moons will be balsamic, so they'll be balsamic, and then they're always going to turn into new moons. So balsamic is ending, so the moon is going to be behind the sun, but within 30 degrees. So essentially a sign, but 30 degrees, and then it's 30 degrees forward if it's in front of it, it's a new moon. So balsamic does mean you've got to focus on just letting things happen, letting things go. Whereas actually it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to do it. You have to be ready to go, okay, I need to let that go, ready for something coming in. But you'll have at least one full new moon and one proper full moon in your chart. Now, how close it is depends on how close that is to your natal moon. So mine's at 5 degrees, and this new moon is at 3 degrees. So actually it's a pretty close one, and my moon's in my 12th house. So it's always one of the reasons why I like the unseen as well. And so it's kind of, I go, okay, that's interesting. What am I going to do with that? And then I might want to look at my lunar return and go, okay, well, where exactly is that sitting in my lunar return? And funny enough, it's also sitting in my 12th house, which is quite good because I like my 12th house. It's there's a lot of energy of the collective. There's a lot of working with the unseen, and funny enough, I've just revamped my website, so I'll be releasing new services that relate to healing, and healing the kind of our physical life through working with your energetic selves. So that makes sense. We've got Uranus there, quite close to it, the Great Awakener. So I'm going, okay, what am I aiming to do? Well, actually, it is a physical sign. It is on my first house. So I'm like, okay, well, I want to do something that is for me. And it is looking at how the first house is very much how you relate to others. It is in in the 12th house, because obviously it's before the ascendant. So, and I obviously use Placidus. So it is kind of looking at, what do I want, as I talked about my services, I'm launching those, and I kind of knew I wanted to launch them, and then about a week or so ago, I really got into this kind of like mad frenzy. A lot of things that I was struggling with kind of came up, and that was funny enough from the full moon. So all the way from the last new moon to the full moon to here, I've got the inspiration and realised I was doing something wrong, so I needed to relaunch it, and it is relates to money. So you've got that material sense as well. So it makes very much sense for that. It's there. It's also on my Chiron. My Chiron is very much about my healing. I do a lot of ancestral and subconscious and trauma work, so that makes sense to launch it at that point. But I didn't know, and I was struggling about a month ago about like rewriting stuff, and it wasn't sticky, and within a few days I'd literally got up and done it. It's nearly ready to do, and then I'm looking at the lunar return and I'm going, okay, what is happening with my lunar return, because my new moons are in there. So I said you have two, I think of them as two opportunities. You have two opportunities to utilise the new moons in your lunar return. So it just basically extends that for a whole month and you get a really good, it will tell you where is best to use that, what is best to make changes. And it's easier to make changes and make them stick when you have them in your lunar return, because it does obviously mean it's hitting your moon. And getting used to your own cycle. So I tend to start things, this is when April, May is when I really start, doing things, the action. I might be thinking about it beforehand, but the action to impel. And bear in mind, I'm only started astrology properly since 2011, and I was doing this way before then, but now I learned to save energy and not waste my time trying to push against the tide. Full moons are, okay, I tend to let something go. I tend to, like for instance, relationships, tend to end relationships when I have my full moons in 6 months' time. Or I let go of things, I change what I'm going to do, or I decide I don't like something. Whereas new moons, and it tends to be something that happens to you a little bit more in the fact that you see it and go, no, I don't like that. Whereas, at the beginning, this is when I'm probably thinking about going, okay, what changes do I want to do? I tend to move later in the year if I'm going to move house. Whereas actually the idea in that seed starts around this time, it starts from my new moons. So that's why I find it really important to look at your new and your full moons, to understand where they sit. How does this work personally for you? Because obviously new and full moons are for everybody, but this is how it personally, this is kind of your personal new moon itself. Just to go, okay, what can I, what is going to be a really good project to start off? It doesn't mean that you have to go to fruition, but it's like, okay, where act on that initial idea, and 6 months time you'll probably see the results of it. It's a really good time. I also then will compare it to my solar return, because obviously your solar return, I already know my natal well enough to know by looking at my solar return what it's hitting, and actually doing a good comparison between the the solar return and the lunar return tells you a little bit more about what's happening in that particular month. So remember, your solar return is a summary, so it's like a conclusion or a summary at the end of a report, and your transits and all of that other detail are the kind of like they are the detail, the data within the report. You can tell I work in IT, can't you? The lunar return with the solar return tells you when the what's promised in the solar return is actually going to manifest. So it is good to narrow down your timing, because a lot of the time people are working with long-term transits, but actually you want to know when in the year is that going to happen. Well, usually lunations tell you, and also your lunar return. Also, I see that as the energy that you can use for the month. What house rises? In mine, it's my second house, And if you remember when right at the beginning of this rambling video, when I talked about the new moon, for London has the new moon in the second house. So I've got a repeating theme of it because I've got Gemini rising. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is now even more interesting because I said I was, redoing my website. What else can I use it for? Well, actually, it's really good for sharing information. So this is kind of a good time for me, and also I can look at, is this going to impact finances in a good way? It's that type of thing. But from an energy worker point of view, I see that as very much a more, Gemini is a very good sign for mental mediumship or telepathy or anything like that. So I have been thinking about doing a lot bit more actively. So it kind of, makes sense on there. And also I see the second house as your own self-value. So, maybe I'm going to make some changes there as well. Maybe that's going to be more of a focus for myself, because obviously this is very personal. It kicks off quite a lot of my solar return, so I know it's important. So there's kind of a number of factors that I know that this new moon is important for me. For one, it is hitting off so many chart factors that is going on. And if you know astrology, you know that if it's a 3 and it's hitting Uranus, is actually also hitting my natal Uranus as well. And I said my moon was at 5, so I already have that. And new and full moons are very good at activating that energy. So I kind of feel it. I feel the transits more, and then I look at the culmination. I look at the new and full moons and go, oh, I know certain things going to happen, because you can't have a significant period of your life without a succession. Especially, I'm not talking about the things that happen in just one moment. I'm talking about things that have a consistent, you have a 6 months of big changes in your life. You'll see that, but by checking your new and full moons, and they will consecutively hit off really big, really important parts of your chart, and then okay, this is a really important period of time. And even if you don't use lunar returns, you can actually still see the lunations to see when that's going to manifest, because I have not seen anything manifest that's significant without a accompanying new or full moon. And sorry, this is going to be, I realise, a long video. I was talking about new and full moons, and I was talking about so I'm working out, and I'm kind of doing this I always do these on the fly, and I really should write out a little bit more of a script. So I know that this lunar return is hitting so many points in my solar return, and those points are hitting my natal, because I'm really not hugely concerned with things in my solar return that don't hit off my natal that much. I'm very concerned, I'm very interested, because that's where the important transits are, and the important points are when it's now that 3, the rule of 3, which works in a lot. If you do mediumship, if you've learned in a spiritualist way, they have the rule of 3. It is, you have to get 3 yeses before you can say that's evidential. Even if you're in seances, you have to get 3 people to say independently that they saw phenomenon before you can record it as phenomenon, weirdly enough. So the rule of 3 is kind of all around us, and this one goes, if it's hitting my natal, it's hitting my lunar return, if it's hitting my natal and it's hitting my solar return, then the lunar return kicks that off. So I know that that's going to be important, because actually I've got those 3. Now I can go back and look at all my transits, and I know I've got important transits and progressions, but I don't look at transits and progressions really on a day-to-day. I will refer back to my monthly lunar return and go, oh, that's interesting. But essentially there's a lot, especially when you're doing readings for other people. You don't always do readings for yourself. I don't know when the moon is. I can feel when the moon is. I can feel when I actually need to know about it. I think that is kind of very much the way I work. And also it's quite time consuming to know about all of those things, and you can get very caught up in it, rather than actually I can feel that energy. If it's important, then I'll be compelled to look at this. And if I look at this, even when I was looking at my lunar returns at the beginning of the year, I looked at my lunations, and then I was like, oh, okay, so I've got the new moon here. Actually, this hits off all of my chart. I tend to work backwards. I'll tend to go, okay, this is hitting an important, this lunation's hitting a really important point. What's happening in the background? Or this aspect is, what is happening in the background? And I don't really pay attention to a lot of mundane transits, because I'm just I don't, because they're not so much personal, unless they're actually got a personal thing happening to me. I don't really take that much, because it's a lot, you know, I use various forms of divination, and that's a lot of information that I don't really need, because I'll just sense it. If it's important, then I'll be pulled towards it, or I'll be left a breadcrumb trail. But if you know that, you know, I knew by looking at my new moon that it was hitting my natal moon, so I know, oh, okay, this is my time. And then I was like, how do I use it? And then I say, okay, my lunar return hits off my solar return, which hits off my natal. Okay, now this is important. And then I go and look at all the transits underneath, because the thing with lunar returns is that your fast moving transit, so like a Venus that goes around the zodiac usually just once a year, although it's spending a lot of time in Gemini this year, but it's a fast moving transit, so it's only really a day or so that you get that energy. So I really don't bother with, you know, anything that is under a year. I don't really take that much notice of it. I only really take notice of it if it's, you know, something major is happening to it outside of that, or like here, it's in my lunar return and it's significant there, it's hitting a significant point, so I'm like, okay, that becomes interesting. If not, it's a transit that lasts a couple of days, but I will sense that. I don't have any worries, and because I do believe, when I'm talking about astrology, it is I focus very much on, I don't look at things as inherently good or bad. I look at things as being neutral, and I look at how I can use it. And then if something happens, I will then go, my first thought is, okay, how can I stop that happening again? So I go through as an autopsy, and then I try and resolve that. Yes, I have been called a fixer. So it doesn't happen again, so I don't have to go through the same thing again, because often I see that as awakening energy, therefore there's lessons to be learned, maybe there's things that I need to change. And obviously you can't control the whole world, and things do happen to you. But I always want to know why it happened. Even if I can't prevent it, I can kind of go, okay, I've learned from this, I'm going to grow from this. And yes, it's a bit sickening, but I like that, because I don't like doing the same thing again. I don't like repeating patterns. I don't like pain. I like things to be a lot easier. So that is one of the reasons, you know, like I'm fairly lazy. So I kind of try and keep things very simple. And then if something happens, I go, how can I prevent it happening again? So I'll go back and perform the autopsy. And one of the things that I use is astrology in it. I might use cards to go, okay, what went wrong for me, and how do I make sure that doesn't happen? Because I do have a lot of problem configurations in my chart, and I always believe that transits are there to kind of help you get the best and express it in the best way. Sometimes we have to get rid of the other stuff first. So because I don't see things as inherently good or bad, and I see them as neutral, then I don't worry about something happening. I just say, oh, it's going to be, you know, what can I do with it? And it changes your mindset a little bit. And I think sometimes when you get caught up of thinking about good or bad, you therefore are already sitting in that state of feeling a little bit anxious. And that anxiety can get out of hand, and it can lead on to, you know, other fears. So it's this is why I minimise the amount that, you know, I do know my overviews, but I kind of, would have highlighted at the beginning of the year the months that I thought were quite important, and usually it's working backwards. I'll go, okay, this is important, and then I'll go and see what's underneath it. I'll say, okay, what other progressions are happening, or, you know, what is going on that's important for me? How do I narrow this down? And actually, yes, I know that May is going to be quite important for me, because of the new moon, being my moon, setting off my whole chart. And the closer it is by degree tells you that how much more important it's going to be. So if you've got something at 10 and in a sign, and something's new moon's at 3, then yes, it could still affect you or impact you in some ways, but it's not going to be as strong as if it's literally within a couple of degrees, then you know it's very personal to you, and it's a very good time to utilise it, or it's going to be a very significant time for you. And then you can kind of work backwards. And if you see this repeating pattern, because new moons often will go through a phase, and full moons, they'll go through a phase where they're at a similar degree, and then they move on, and then they can rapidly go, increment degrees. But if you see them in that pattern, and say you've got something at 20 and that's held at 20 for 4 months, then you know every month is going to hit that same point in your chart. So that's really important. For me, because I focus on patterns, and patterns are the most kind of important thing for me. Seeing those repeating patterns, which is kind of one of the reasons why I like astrology, because it is about cycles and repeating patterns, and I work very much in that way. So I work backwards in that way, and then I go, okay, what's underneath? So what's your foundation? What is your middle? So, and then what is going to trigger it off? And lunations are triggers, just like Mars is. So actually, this is the culmination of when. And I want to really know to pinpoint, so I can kind of pinpoint it's going to be around these couple of weeks, if it's here, if not within the day, and you can actually see what it's kicking off. I think that's important. And I was looking around, because I think I have. So I think I've got this on my, I've already got, I don't know if you can see this. So, so I kind of, if I want to, I keep it that is also on the, if you go to my PDF site, which I'll put the link in here, you'll see that I've got lots of templates, and one of them lists the lunations. I'm doing the new 2021 one shortly, but it's a worksheet where you can keep a note and kind of see what you expect to happen, or keep a record of it if you want to go retrospectively. That is my transit journal, so you can actually just go, okay, it helps you kind of tidy your mind to work out what is going to be important, and you need a foundation, you need the middle, and you need the trigger. And if you have those, all of three, then you're likely to know things that are when things are going to happen, because often these are things that go on for a really long time, transits or regressions that go on for a really long time. I want to know when. I don't want to know when within a 6 month period. I want to know when within weeks, because I'm that type of person. So that's why I kind of use those tools, and it's a bit of overkill, probably people will say, but I'm kind of like that. I dig into the details, but only when I need to. And it helps me look into things when I need to, or just highlight this is going to be an important month, or this is going to be a month where I need to kind of watch what I'm doing, what I'm spending, or my behaviour, because of other forces on it. Or it could be the fact that I go, okay, this is a really great time to learn this particular thing, as I said, embed this thing. Or if I'm waiting to see if something's going to happen, then, say you've already started working on something and you want to know when it's going to happen. Again, astrology is really good. Look at your full moons, look at what it's hitting off, look at your lunar return. If it's significant, it will look significant even without you having to compare it to anything else. And then you go, oh, this is now significant, and it will then match up. So try not to get caught up in too many details, especially, don't set yourself to worry so much about it. So hopefully this, I know it's a long video, I only expected to do about 10 or 20 minutes. Let me know any comments, anything that you want me to go further into. I can probably put up some proper diagrams. I'll work out how that works at some point and show you. So thank you for watching.